The silence of space broke like glass as the Crimson Dragon warships dropped out of hyperspace. Their hulls gleamed red against the black void, each vessel shaped like the creatures they honored, long, sleek, and dangerous. Battle scars marked their armor plating, telling stories of 1,000 conquered worlds. Commander Vex Thera stood on the bridge of the flagship Times Blood Talon Asterisk, her crimson scales rippling with barely contained fury. Her yellow eyes burned as she stared at the blue-green world spinning below them. Earth, the planet that had dared to shelter what belonged to the Crimson Dragon clan. Target acquired, Commander, reported her weapons officer, his clawed hands dancing over the controls. The human settlement shows minimal defensive capabilities. We could glass it in minutes. Vex Thara's tail lashed behind her, a sign of her agitation. No. This requires precision, not destruction. The hatchlings must be recovered alive. Everything else. She paused, her fangs showing in what might have been a smile. Everything else burns. The story had reached them 3 solar cycles ago through the galactic communication networks. Human traders had somehow acquired 5 Crimson Dragon eggs from a black market dealer. The eggs were priceless. Not just for their monetary value, but for what they represented. Each egg contained the future of their warrior bloodline, children of their greatest champions. The humans claimed they had purchased the eggs legally, not knowing what they were. They even offered to return them peacefully when the clan made contact. But the Crimson Dragons knew better. Nobody acquired their eggs accidentally. This was theft, plain and simple, and theft demanded blood payment. Beginning descent, announced the pilot. Estimated time to target. 30 Earth minutes. Vex Thera nodded, her hand instinctively moving to the plasma blade at her hip. She had lost her own clutch to raiders 5 years ago. The thought of human hands touching dragon eggs filled her with a rage that threatened to consume her rational mind. But she was a commander, not a berserker. She would retrieve the eggs first. Then she would make the humans understand the price of crossing the Crimson Dragon clan. The fleet descended through Earth's atmosphere like falling meteors, their heat shields glowing orange-red. Ground-based sensors screamed warnings across human communication networks. But Vex Thera paid them no attention. What could these soft, weak creatures do against the might of dragon technology? The settlement was called New Haven, a modest agricultural colony on the northern continent. From orbit, it looked pathetically small. Maybe 3,000 humans scattered across several square kilometers of farmland. Their defensive installations were laughable. Some basic energy barriers and a handful of outdated missile platforms. Commander, her tactical officer called out. We're receiving a transmission from the settlement. They're requesting permission to speak. Deny it, Vex Thera growled. We did not come here to talk. But even as she said it, something nagged at the back of her mind. The human transmission had not been panicked or threatening. It had been polite, respectful, even. That was unusual. Most species either tried to fight or immediately surrendered when faced with dragon warships. Very few attempted diplomacy. The fleet settled into low orbit above New Haven, weapons trained on key population centers. Vex Thera's personal transport, a sleek assault craft called Times Flamebearer, Asterisk, detached from the main ship and began its descent to the planet's surface. Scan for dragon biosignatures, she ordered her pilot. The eggs should be emitting detectable pheromone traces by now. The scanner hummed for several seconds before producing results. Got them, Commander. 5 distinct signatures, all clustered together in the settlement's central district. Structural analysis suggests they're inside a residential building. Vex Thera's eyes narrowed. Power signatures around that building? Minimal, Commander. Basic electrical systems, some kind of climate control, communication equipment. Nothing that suggests heavy security or containment systems. That was odd. If the humans had stolen the eggs for profit, why weren't they being kept in a secure facility? Why leave them in what appeared to be someone's home? The Times Flamebearer Times touched down in a field outside New Haven with barely a whisper of displaced air. Dragon technology was silent when it needed to be. Vexithera emerged from the craft accompanied by her personal guard. 6 of the clan's finest warriors, each standing nearly 3 meters tall and armored in the traditional battle plate of their ancestors. The humans were waiting for them. A small group stood at the edge of the settlement, hands raised in what Vexithera recognized as a universal gesture of non-aggression. They were led by an older human male, with gray hair and kind eyes, wearing simple civilian clothing. Behind him stood perhaps a dozen others, men, women, even some of their young. Commander Vexithera of the Crimson Dragon clan, the old man called out as they approached. I am Marcus Chen, administrator of New Haven. We've been expecting you. Vexithera's warriors tensed, hands moving to their weapons, but she raised a clawed hand to stop them. Something about this situation felt wrong, but not in a dangerous way. More like unexpected. You have something that belongs to us, she said, her voice carrying the authority of generations of dragon commanders. Return our eggs, and your deaths will be swift. Marcus Chen nodded sadly. I understand your anger, Commander. If someone had taken my children, I would move heaven and earth to get them back. But before we discuss terms, there's something you need to see. I need to see nothing but our eggs returned. Vexithera snarled, though she made no move to advance. Her tactical training warned her that confident enemies were often the most dangerous ones. Please, Marcus said, his voice carrying genuine emotion. Just 5 minutes of your time. If you still want to kill us all afterward, we won't resist. But you need to understand what's happened here. One of Vexithera's guards, a young warrior named Torvek, growled low in his throat. Commander, we should just take what is ours and burn this place to ash. These humans play games with us. But Vexithera found herself curious despite her rage. In all her years of military service, she had never encountered a species that seemed so calm in the face of overwhelming force. Most beings either fought desperately or groveled for mercy. These humans did neither. Very well, she said finally. 5 minutes, then I start killing. Marcus Chen smiled, though there was sadness in his expression. Thank you, Commander. Please, follow me. He turned and began walking toward the settlement, moving slowly to show he posed no threat. Vexithera and her guards followed, weapons ready but not drawn. The other humans fell into step behind them, maintaining respectful distance. New Haven was larger than it had appeared from orbit, but still modest by galactic standards. The buildings were mostly single-story structures built from local materials: wood, stone, and some kind of polymer composite. Gardens and small farms surrounded each dwelling, creating an impression of peaceful prosperity. Children watched from doorways as the procession passed, their young eyes wide with curiosity rather than fear. That struck Vexithera as particularly strange. In her experience, human young were usually the first to sense danger and hide. These seemed almost excited to see real dragons. The eggs came to us 3 months ago, Marcus explained as they walked. A trading ship captain named Harrison brought them, said he'd won them in a card game on Nexus Station. He had no idea what they were, thought they were just unusual crystals or maybe some kind of art object. Vexithera's tail twitched with irritation. And you believed this story? We did, because Harrison is honest to a fault. He's traded with us for years, and he's never lied about his merchandise. Besides, Marcus glanced back at her with something that might have been amusement. They were clearly eggs from the moment we saw them. The question was, eggs of what? They had reached the central district now, approaching a modest 2-story building that appeared to be some kind of community center. The bioscanner on Vexithera's armor confirmed that the eggs were inside. We consulted every xenobiology database we could access, Marcus continued. When we finally identified them as dragon eggs, we immediately sent word through diplomatic channels. We wanted to return them to your people as quickly as possible. Yet here they are, 3 months later, Vexithera said coldly. Still in your possession. Marcus paused at the building's entrance. That's complicated. You see, Commander, something happened that we didn't expect, something that none of our databases prepared us for. He opened the door and gestured for them to enter. Vexthera stepped inside, her guards close behind, every sense alert for danger. The interior was warm and dimly lit, furnished with simple human furniture arranged around a central common area. The walls were decorated with children's artwork, colorful drawings of animals and spaceships and families. The bioscanner indicated the eggs were somewhere deeper in the building. "This way," Marcus said, leading them toward a staircase. "But please, Commander, move quietly. He's sleeping." "He?" Vexthera demanded. "Dr. James Morrison. He's our xenobiologist, the one who identified your eggs. He's also—" Marcus paused, choosing his words carefully. "He's become somewhat attached to them." They climbed the stairs to the second floor, where a hallway led to several doors. Marcus stopped at one marked with a small placard reading, "Dr. Morrison, Xenobiology Lab." But instead of entering, he gestured to a small window set into the door. "Look for yourself," he whispered. Vexthera approached the window, her guard close behind. What she saw inside stopped her cold. The room beyond was set up as both a laboratory and living space. Scientific equipment lined the walls, incubators, monitoring devices, specimen containers. But in the center of the room was something unexpected. A large, comfortable chair reclined almost flat, like a bed. In that chair lay a human male, perhaps 40 years old, wearing casual clothes. He was clearly asleep, his breathing deep and regular. But it was what lay upon his chest that made Vexthera's breath catch in her throat. 5 dragon eggs, each the size of a human's head, rested against the sleeping man's body. They were arranged almost protectively, nestled in what appeared to be specially designed cushions. But more than that, they were glowing, the soft bioluminescence that indicated healthy. Developing dragon embryos pulsed gently, in rhythm with the human's heartbeat. "Impossible," whispered Torvek behind her. Vexthera stared through the window, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. Dragon eggs required precise environmental conditions to develop properly: temperature, humidity, atmospheric composition, and most crucially, the presence of adult dragon pheromones and bioelectrical fields. Without these things, the eggs would go dormant within days and die within weeks. These eggs had been away from dragon space for over 3 months. They should have been cold and lifeless. Instead, they were glowing more brightly than any egg she had ever seen. "How?" she breathed. Marcus Chen joined her at the window, his expression gentle. "We're not entirely sure, Doctor." Morrison began studying them immediately after we identified what they were. He was trying to determine the best way to preserve them until we could arrange their return to your people. "But dragon eggs require specific biochemical conditions," Vexthera said, her scientific training warring with what her eyes were showing her. "Human physiology is completely incompatible." "That's what our databases said too," Marcus agreed. But the eggs began responding to Dr. Morrison from the first day he began working with them. When he held them for examination, they grew brighter. When he set them down, they dimmed. After a few days, he realized they were healthiest when in direct contact with his body. One of her guards, a veteran warrior named Kestar, growled softly. "This is some kind of human deception. Eggs cannot bond with alien life forms." But even as he spoke, Vexthera could see the truth with her own eyes. Through the window, one of the eggs pulsed more brightly, and the sleeping human stirred slightly, his hand moving unconsciously to rest on the egg's surface. The glow intensified, and the man settled back into peaceful sleep. "Doctor, Morrison hasn't left this room for more than a few hours at a time in the past month," Marcus explained quietly. "He sleeps with them, eats with them, works with them nearby. He says they seem to respond to his emotional state. They're brightest when he's calm and content, dimmer when he's stressed or upset. That's," Vexthera struggled for words, "that's how hatchlings bond with their parents. But these aren't even hatched yet. We know." Dr. Morrison consulted every xenobiology expert he could reach. The consensus is that something unprecedented is happening here. The eggs are developing faster and more healthily than they should be, even under ideal dragon conditions. Through the window, They could see monitoring equipment around the chair displaying various readings: heart rate, brain activity, temperature, both human and egg. The displays showed synchronized patterns that should have been impossible. "Commander," Torvek said urgently, "we must retrieve the eggs immediately. Whatever these humans have done to them, whatever contamination has occurred, our scientists can reverse it." But Vexthara found herself hesitating. In her culture, eggs that had successfully bonded with a parent were sacred. To separate them unnecessarily was considered one of the gravest possible sins. But these eggs had bonded with an alien. How could that even be possible? "There's more you need to know," Marcus said softly. "The eggs aren't just developing faster. They're developing differently. Dr. Morrison's scans show neural activity patterns unlike anything in our databases. The hatchlings are going to be extraordinary, even by dragon standards." "What do you mean?" Vexthara demanded. Marcus gestured to a display panel built into the wall beside the window. "With your permission, I'd like to show you Dr. Morrison's research data. But first, I think you should meet him." Before Vexthara could respond, the human in the chair stirred. He sat up slowly, careful not to disturb the eggs, and looked toward the window. When he saw the dragons watching him, he didn't seem afraid. Instead, he smiled and carefully gathered the eggs in his arms before standing. A moment later, the door opened, and Dr. James Morrison emerged carrying the 5 dragon eggs like precious children. His movements were careful and practiced, clearly born from months of experience. The eggs glowed more brightly in his presence, pulsing with healthy life. "Commander Vexthara," he said, his voice warm despite the circumstances. "I'm Dr. Morrison. I've been taking care of your children." "Your children." The words hit Vexthara like a physical blow. This human spoke of dragon eggs, her people's most precious possessions, with the tenderness of a parent. "They're not my children," she said, though her voice lacked its earlier venom. "They belong to the Crimson Dragon clan." "Doctor," Morrison nodded seriously. "Yes, I know. And I want to return them to their families more than anything, but—" He looked down at the eggs in his arms, his expression troubled. "I'm not sure they want to leave." As if responding to his words, the eggs pulsed brighter, and Vexthara could swear she heard something impossible. The faint sound of contented humming that dragon hatchlings made when they felt safe and loved. The soft humming sound filled the corridor, and Vexthara felt her world shift beneath her feet. That sound was sacred to her people. The first sign of consciousness in developing hatchlings, proof that they were healthy and content. She had heard it only a handful of times in her life, always in the most protected nurseries of the dragon homeworld. "That's impossible," breathed Kestar, his scarred face pale with shock. "Unhatched eggs cannot vocalize." Dr. Morrison looked up from the glowing eggs in his arms, his expression gentle but serious. "I thought the same thing when it first happened. But they've been doing this for weeks now, usually when they're feeling particularly safe or happy." He paused, studying Vexthara's stunned expression. "You recognize that sound, don't you?" "It is the song of contentment," Vexthara whispered, her voice barely audible. "Hatchlings make that sound when they trust their parent completely." She shook her head, trying to clear her thoughts. "But these are still eggs, and you are not dragon." "No, I'm not," Dr. Morrison agreed. "But they don't seem to care about that." Marcus Chen gestured toward the laboratory. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation inside?" "Doctor, Morrison has spent months documenting everything. His research might help you understand what's happening here." Vexthara found herself nodding, though part of her mind still insisted this was all some elaborate human deception. Her guards flanked her as they entered the lab. Weapons ready, but not drawn. The room was larger than it had appeared through the window. Scientific equipment covered every surface: monitoring devices, incubation chambers, atmospheric analyzers, and several computer terminals displaying streams of data. But what struck Vexthara most was how the space felt lived in. A small kitchen area occupied one corner, and personal items were scattered throughout: books, pictures, even what appeared to be children's toys. "This is your living space," she observed. Dr. Morrison nodded as he carefully placed the eggs back in their specialized cushions on the reclined chair. "For the past 2 months?" "Yes. I tried keeping them in the standard lab at first, but they weren't thriving. Their bio readings were weak, their development was slow. But whenever I held them or sat with them, everything improved dramatically." He activated one of the computer terminals, and a holographic display materialized above it, showing complex biological data. "Look at this. These are the eggs' vital signs from their first week here." The display showed 5 faint, irregular patterns, barely detectable life signs that wavered between existence and dormancy. "Now compare that to their current status," Dr. Morrison said, switching to a different data set. The difference was remarkable. The new patterns were strong, steady, and incredibly complex. Neural activity that should have been impossible in unhatched creatures, bioelectrical fields that pulsed with vitality, and growth rates that exceeded even optimal dragon nursery conditions. "This makes no scientific sense," Torvek growled, though his voice carried more confusion than anger now. "Dragon eggs require specific pheromone signatures, precise atmospheric conditions, temperature regulation within narrow parameters. Human biochemistry cannot provide these things." "You're right," Dr. Morrison agreed. "And that's what puzzled me for weeks. So I started monitoring everything. My own biosigns, the eggs' responses, environmental factors, even my emotional state." He pulled up another display, this one showing synchronized wave patterns. "What I found changed everything I thought I knew about interspecies biology." The hologram showed 2 sets of brainwave patterns running side by side. One was clearly human, the other something else entirely, more complex, with harmonic frequencies that seemed to dance around the human pattern. "The eggs aren't just responding to me," Dr. Morrison explained. "They're synchronizing with me. My heartbeat, my breathing, even my sleep cycles. But more than that, they're somehow translating my human biochemistry into something they can use for their development." Vex Thara studied the data with growing amazement. "That should be impossible. Our species evolved on different worlds, under different stars. Our biology is completely incompatible." "I thought so too," Dr. Morrison said. "But then I started researching dragon reproduction in more detail. I learned something fascinating about your species' evolution." He called up another display, this one showing genetic analysis data. "Dragons didn't always require such specific conditions for egg development. In your species' ancient past, the eggs were much more adaptable. They could bond with various parent species, absorbing what they needed from any sufficiently complex nervous system." Kestar stepped forward, his expression suspicious. "Where did you obtain ancient dragon genetic data?" "That information is classified by the High Council." Dr. Morrison smiled sadly. "From the eggs themselves. They've been teaching me, in a way. The neural activity I mentioned? It's not random. There are patterns in it, almost like a language. Over the past month, I've been able to decode some of it." He touched a control, and the room filled with soft, harmonious tones. The eggs' humming amplified and translated into audible frequencies. "They dream, Doctor," Morrison said softly. "Every night, they dream of their ancestors, of the time before dragons built their great cities and required such rigid nursery conditions. They remember when their people could bond with any creature that showed them love and protection." The revelation struck Vex Thara like a plasma blast. Ancient dragon history spoke of the Age of Wandering, when their ancestors had traveled between worlds and formed bonds with many species. But that had been millions of years ago, before the evolution of modern dragon society. "You're saying these eggs are reverting to ancestral genetics?" she asked. "Not exactly reverting," Dr. Morrison replied. "More like remembering. The capability was always there, dormant in their genetic code. My care somehow activated it." He moved to stand beside the eggs, and their glow intensified immediately. "At first, I thought I was just keeping them alive until you could come for them. But as the weeks passed, I realized they were changing me as much as I was affecting them. What do you mean? Vexthara demanded. Dr. Morrison rolled up his sleeves, revealing his arms. Vexthara gasped. His skin showed faint patterns of scales. Not full dragon transformation, but definite reptilian characteristics. His eyes, too, showed subtle changes. The irises had developed flecks of gold that caught the light. The bonding process is mutual, he explained. They're not just taking from me. They're giving back, sharing their genetic heritage, their memories, their instincts. I've learned more about dragon culture in the past month than most xenoanthropologists learn in decades. Torvek raised his weapon, his face twisted with disgust. Abomination! No human should carry dragon essence. But Vexthara held up a hand to stop him. Wait. She approached Dr. Morrison slowly, studying his transformed features. What else have you learned from them? Dr. Morrison met her eyes without fear. I've learned that dragons value honor above all else, that your people would rather die than break their word, that family bonds are sacred, and that children are protected at any cost. He paused, his voice growing softer. I've learned that you've lost hatchlings to raiders before, Commander. The eggs, they carry genetic memories of your grief. The words hit Vexthara like a physical blow. She staggered backward, her composure cracking. How could you know that? Because they know, Dr. Morrison said gently. Dragon eggs don't just develop randomly. They're assigned to specific families based on genetic compatibility and emotional need. These 5 eggs were being transported to families who had suffered losses. They carry the potential to heal old wounds. He gestured to the eggs, which pulsed with gentle light. That's why they bonded with me so strongly. I lost my own daughter 3 years ago. Cancer. The grief was so deep it was killing me. But caring for these eggs, protecting them, watching them grow, it gave me purpose again. Vexthara found herself trembling, her carefully maintained command mask slipping away. My clutch, she whispered. I lost my clutch to Vorthan raiders 5 years ago. 3 eggs, destroyed before they could hatch. I know, Dr. Morrison said softly. The eggs told me. They've been waiting for you, Commander. Not just any dragon. You specifically. The humming from the eggs grew stronger, more complex. Harmonies layered upon harmonies, creating a sound that seemed to reach directly into Vexthara's soul. It was the song of welcome, of family reunion, of children calling to their parent. This is madness, Kestar growled. But his voice lacked conviction. Even he could hear the emotion in the egg's song. Doctor, Morrison approached one of the terminals and activated a new display. There's something else you need to see. The eggs have been developing faster than normal, yes, but they're also developing differently. The neural patterns show capabilities that don't exist in modern dragon genetics. The holographic display showed brain development charts, comparing normal dragon hatchlings to these eggs. The difference was striking. They're going to be extraordinary, Dr. Morrison continued. Enhanced intelligence, increased empathy, and most importantly, the ability to bond with multiple species simultaneously. They represent what dragons were meant to become, before isolation and rigid traditions limited their potential. Vexthara stared at the data, her scientific mind warring with her emotional response. You're saying these hatchlings will be evolved? I'm saying they'll be bridges, Dr. Morrison replied, capable of understanding and connecting with other species in ways that haven't been possible for millions of years. They could usher in a new age of cooperation between dragons and the rest of the galaxy. Marcus Chen, who had been quietly observing from the doorway, stepped forward. Dr. Morrison, show them the communication records. Dr. Morrison nodded and activated another terminal. Over the past week, the eggs have been trying to communicate directly with Dragon Space. They've been sending signals through subspace channels, messages too complex for our equipment to decode, but definitely directed toward your homeworld. What kind of messages? Vexthara asked. We think they're calling their families, Dr. Morrison said. but not just asking to be rescued. They're trying to explain what's happening here, to prepare their people for something unprecedented. A new voice suddenly filled the room. Not the humming of the eggs, but actual words in ancient dragon tongue. The eggs themselves were speaking. Asterisk, Mother Commander comes seeking blood payment, but finds life gift instead. Asterisk, the voice said, layered and harmonious as if spoken by multiple beings at once. Asterisk, the time of isolation ends, the time of unity begins. Ancient bonds awaken. Asterisk. Vex Thera dropped to her knees, overwhelmed. To hear unhatched eggs speak was beyond miraculous. It was a sign of the divine. In all dragon history, there were only legends of such events, stories told to hatchlings about the earliest days of their civilization. Asterisk, fear not, clutch mother. Asterisk, the voices continued. Asterisk, we are not lost to you. We are found. The bridge builder has prepared us for greatness. Through his care, we remember what dragons once were and what we might become again. Asterisk. Dr. Morrison knelt beside the chair, placing his transformed hands gently on the eggs. I know you came here for them, he said to Vex Thara, and they belong with their people. But I think they want something more than just rescue. What? Vex Thara whispered. The eggs pulsed brighter, and their united voice filled the room again. Asterisk. We want the bridge builder to come home with us. We want both our families to become one, the human father and the dragon mother, united in purpose. This is the path to healing old wounds and building new tomorrows. Asterisk. A silence fell over the lab. Vex Thara stared at the speaking eggs, her entire worldview reshaping itself around this impossible moment. Her guards stood frozen, weapons forgotten, witnessing something that would become legend among their people. Finally, Marcus Chen cleared his throat. Commander, there's one more thing you should know. Dr. Morrison isn't the only one who has been affected by caring for the eggs. Our entire settlement has felt their influence. People are healthier, happier, more cooperative. Children who were struggling in school are suddenly excelling. Adults who had given up hope are finding new purpose. He activated a wall display showing community statistics. Crime has dropped to 0. Productivity is up 40%. Most remarkably, we've had 7 other species make contact with us in the past month, all drawn by signals the eggs have been broadcasting. New Haven has become an informal embassy for peaceful first contact. Dr. Morrison stood slowly, his eyes meeting Vex Thera's. I'll go with you, if that's what the eggs want. I'll leave everything I've known behind to help raise these children, but I think they're trying to tell us something important. They don't want to choose between their dragon heritage and their human bond. They want both. The eggs hummed agreement, their glow warming the entire room. And in that moment, Vex Thera realized that her mission had changed completely. She had come seeking justice for a theft. Instead, she had found something that might save both their species from the isolation and mistrust that had defined galactic politics for millennia. The silence stretched for long moments, broken only by the gentle humming of the eggs. Vex Thara remained kneeling beside the chair, her mind struggling to process everything she had witnessed. Behind her, her warriors stood in stunned confusion, their weapons lowered but their loyalty unwavering. Finally, Torvek spoke, his voice carefully controlled. Commander, we must contact the High Council immediately. They need to know what has happened here. Ochre. Vex Thera nodded slowly, rising to her feet. Open a quantum channel to the homeworld. Priority, Alpha Communication. As Torvek activated his communication device, Dr. Morrison stepped closer to Vex Thara. Whatever you decide, I want you to know, I never meant for any of this to happen. I was just trying to keep them safe, until you could take them home. I want you to know. I want you to know. I was just trying to keep them home. I want you to know. 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 I want you to know formation. I want you to know formation. I know, Vex Thera replied, studying his transformed features. But intentions matter less than consequences. You have changed everything. The communication device crackled to life, and a holographic projection materialized in the center of the lab. The figure that appeared was imposing even in miniature. An ancient dragon with silver scales and eyes that burned with the wisdom of centuries. High Counselor Zephyros, eldest of the Crimson Dragon clan. Commander Vex Thera, the projection spoke, his voice carrying across light years of space. Report your status. Have you recovered the stolen eggs? Honored Counselor, Vex Thera began, then paused, choosing her words carefully. The situation is more complex than we anticipated. Explain. Vex Thera gestured to Dr. Morrison and the glowing eggs. The eggs are safe. But they have bonded with a human caretaker. They are developing beyond normal parameters and have achieved consciousness while still unhatched. The projection flickered as Zephyros leaned forward. That is impossible. Send detailed bioscans immediately. Over the next several minutes, Torvek transmitted streams of data to the homeworld, while Dr. Morrison's monitoring equipment provided real-time readings of the egg's development. The High Counselor remained silent, analyzing the information with growing amazement. These readings suggest the eggs have awakened ancestral genetics, Zephyros finally said. Such a thing has not been seen for 1,000,000 years. There is more, honored Counselor, Vex Thera said. The eggs have spoken. They express a desire for their human caretaker to accompany them to Dragon Space. The projection of Zephyros turned to study Dr. Morrison. Human, approach and be recognized. Dr. Morrison stepped forward, showing no fear, despite facing one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Honored Counselor, I am Dr. James Morrison. I have cared for these eggs to the best of my ability. You bear dragon markings, Zephyros observed. How is this possible? The bonding process has been mutual, Dr. Morrison explained. The eggs have shared their genetic heritage with me, just as I have provided them with care and protection. We have become family in ways that transcend species. The ancient dragon was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Show me the egg's current neural patterns. Dr. Morrison activated the holographic display, and the complex brainwave signatures filled the air between them. Even across the vast distance of space, Zephyros could see the unprecedented nature of the development occurring. Extraordinary, the High Counselor breathed. These patterns suggest not just consciousness, but enhanced consciousness. Intelligence beyond normal dragon parameters. As if responding to the discussion about them, the eggs began to glow more brightly. Their combined voice filled the room again, speaking directly to the projection. Asterisk, honored elder. We greet you across the void. Asterisk. They said in unison. Asterisk. We are the children of prophecy. The bridge between what was and what will be. The human father has awakened in us the ancient gifts. Through him, we have remembered the old ways. Asterisk. Zephyros's expression shifted from confusion to awe. The prophecy of return, he whispered. It speaks of eggs that would awaken the ancient powers, children who would restore the bonds between dragons and other species. Asterisk. Yes. Honored elder. Asterisk. The eggs replied. Asterisk. The time of isolation ends. The human father must come with us. For the bonding cannot be severed without great harm. Together, we will teach both our peoples that unity brings strength greater than division. Asterisk. The High Counselor closed his eyes, seeming to commune with some inner wisdom. When he opened them again, his gaze was resolute. Commander Vex Thera, the High Council hereby declares these circumstances unprecedented. The eggs must be brought home, but their wishes regarding their human caretaker must be honored. Counselor, Kestar interrupted. Surely you don't mean to allow a human onto the homeworld. The security implications alone. Asterisk, the warrior speaks from fear. Asterisk. The egg's voices cut through his objection. Asterisk. But fear is the path to stagnation. We offer growth, evolution, hope. The human father poses no threat. He seeks only to nurture and protect. Asterisk. Zephyros studied the data streams one more time. The egg's development rate suggests they will hatch within days rather than weeks. This human's presence appears essential to their health. Therefore, Dr. Morrison, you are formally invited to Dragon Space as an honored guest and guardian. Dr. Morrison looked stunned. I never expected. Are you sure this is what you want? I would be leaving behind everything I've known. Marcus Chen stepped forward. James, you've found your calling. These eggs need you. And through them, you might help heal the rift between our species. Asterisk. The bridge builder fears abandoning his human family. Asterisk. The eggs observed. Asterisk. But he does not abandon. He expands. Through him, two families become one. Asterisk. Vexthara found herself speaking. Dr. Morrison, I came here seeking blood for theft. Instead, I found someone who has shown my people's children more love and care than many of our own nursery keepers provide. If you are willing, I would be honored to call you clan brother. The words surprised even her. In dragon culture, offering clan kinship to an alien was unprecedented. But then, everything about this situation was unprecedented. Dr. Morrison looked around the lab, at the eggs that had become his children, at the data that represented months of devoted research, at the faces of both humans and dragons, watching him with hope. The eggs are right, he said finally. This isn't about leaving one family for another. It's about building something new. He turned to Marcus Chen. Will you take care of my research? Share it with anyone who wants to understand what we've discovered here? Of course, Marcus replied. But James, this isn't goodbye. If these eggs are right about ushering in a new age of cooperation, then New Haven will always be here as a bridge between worlds. Over the next hour, preparations began for departure. Dr. Morrison gathered essential supplies, while the eggs' bio readings remained stable and strong. The dragon warriors, initially suspicious, found themselves impressed by the humans' dedication to the eggs' welfare. Asterisk, it is time. Asterisk, the eggs announced as the sun began to set over New Haven. Asterisk, we must return home to complete our development. The homeworld calls to us. Asterisk, Dr. Morrison carefully lifted each egg, settling them into a specially designed transport container that would maintain their comfort during the journey to Dragon Space. Their glow dimmed slightly at being moved, but they began humming contentedly as soon as he was seated beside them. Vexthara watched the process with growing respect. You handle them like a natural parent. How did you know the proper techniques? Cry. They taught me. Dr. Morrison replied. Every day, they showed me what they needed, how they wanted to be held, what made them comfortable. It was like learning a new language, one based on emotion and instinct rather than words. As they boarded the Times flame-bearer asterisk, half the population of New Haven gathered to see them off. Children waved drawings they had made of dragons and eggs, while adults offered gifts and messages for the homeworld. Tell them we're not all conquerors and thieves, called out one of the farmers. Tell them some of us just want to be neighbors. Asterisk, we will tell them. Asterisk, the eggs replied, their voices carrying clearly through the transport's communication system. Asterisk, we will tell them that humanity's greatest strength is not their weapons or their technology, but their capacity for love. The bridge builder has shown us that love transcends all barriers. Asterisk, the journey to Dragon Space took 3 days, during which Dr. Morrison never left the egg's side. Vexthara spent much of the time observing the bonding process, taking detailed notes for the High Council. What she witnessed challenged everything dragons thought they knew about interspecies relationships. The human's care was constant but never smothering. He seemed to instinctively know when the eggs needed quiet and when they wanted interaction. When they hummed, he hummed back in harmonies that shouldn't have been possible for human vocal cords. When they pulsed with activity during their dream cycles, he placed his hands on them and somehow calmed their restless energy. How do you know what they need? Vexthara asked during one of these sessions. I feel it, Dr. Morrison replied simply. It's like having 5 extra hearts beating in rhythm with mine. When they're distressed, I feel distressed. When they're content, I feel peaceful, he smiled. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced. On the final day of their journey, as the dragon homeworld grew large in the viewports, the eggs' activity increased dramatically. Their humming became more complex, harmonies layering upon harmonies as they sensed their approaching birthplace. Asterisk home calls to us, asterisk, they sang. Asterisk. But home is no longer just one place. Home is wherever the bridge builder is, wherever the clutch mother is, wherever love and protection surround us. We carry the potential for a new kind of home, one that spans stars and species. Asterisk. The dragon homeworld was a sight that few non-dragons had ever seen. Vast cities carved into mountainsides, towers that reached into the clouds, and bioluminescent gardens that painted the landscape in shifting colors. As their ship descended toward the capital, Vexthera pointed out significant landmarks. That is the council chamber, where the High Counselor meets with clan leaders. There is the Great Nursery, where most dragon eggs are incubated. And that, she gestured toward a massive crystal structure, is the Hall of Memory, where our history is preserved. Asterisk. We will add new memories to that hall. Asterisk. The eggs observed. Asterisk. Memories of unity, of bridges built between distant shores, of love that conquers fear. Asterisk. The ship settled onto a landing platform surrounded by hundreds of dragons. Word of the miraculous eggs had spread throughout dragon space, and representatives from every clan had gathered to witness their arrival. As the transport ramp lowered, a hush fell over the assembled crowd. Dr. Morrison emerged carrying the eggs, his transformed features marking him clearly as something unprecedented. The watching dragons saw not an alien intruder, but someone who bore the markings of their own kind. Behind him came Vexthera, her expression proud and protective. High Counselor Zephyros stood at the center of the welcoming committee, his ancient eyes bright with anticipation. Dr. Morrison, welcome to the dragon homeworld. You carry precious cargo. I carry my children, Dr. Morrison replied, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. And they carry the future. As if responding to his words, the eggs began to crack. Fine lines appeared on their surfaces, spreading in complex patterns that seemed to follow some inner design. The crowd of dragons gasped as they realized what they were witnessing. The beginning of hatching. It's time, Dr. Morrison whispered, carefully settling onto the ground and arranging the eggs around himself. They're ready. What happened next would be remembered for generations in dragon history. The 5 eggs hatched simultaneously, their shells splitting apart to reveal hatchlings unlike any seen before. They were clearly dragons, but their scales shimmered with colors that shifted based on their emotions. Their eyes held an intelligence that seemed ancient, despite their newborn state. But most remarkably, they made no sound of distress at emerging into the world. Instead, they crawled immediately to Dr. Morrison, nuzzling against him with complete trust, and then, to the amazement of everyone present, they also crawled to Vexthera, accepting her as their mother with the same instinctive recognition. The first hatchling to speak looked up at the assembled crowd and said, in perfect dragon tongue, asterisk, we are the children of 2 worlds, born of love that bridges all differences. Through us, the age of unity begins. Asterisk. High Counselor Zephyros knelt before the miraculous hatchlings, tears streaming down his ancient face. The prophecy is fulfilled, he declared. The age of isolation ends today. In the years that followed, Dr. Morrison would become the first human to hold a permanent position in dragon society, serving as an ambassador and teacher. The 5 hatchlings he had nurtured would grow to become leaders who transformed galactic politics, using their unique abilities to broker peace between species that had warred for millennia. But on that day, as the sun set over the dragon homeworld and the newly hatched children slept peacefully in the arms of both their human father and their dragon mother, all that mattered was the simple truth the eggs had taught them. Love is the greatest force in the universe, capable of transforming enemies into family and building bridges across any divide. The Crimson Dragon clan had come seeking blood, but they discovered something far more precious. The beginning of a new age where the phrase, different species, would gradually give way to extended family. And in the Hall of Memory, historians began recording the first chapter of what would come to be known as the Age of Harmony, when a human's love for 5 dragon eggs changed the course of galactic history forever.